I'm Everett Curdy, and I'm going to be talking about the astrology for the week of May 14th of this year because there's a lot going on. And, we're really talking about a lot of huge, powerful, and really dynamic energy. And so I'm not going to be talking about Jupiter, which is going to be moving into Taurus this week. I have another video on that. But the focus of this particular video is on the time period between May 17th and May 20th, and perhaps May 21st. And within those 5 days, within those 4 days, we have the new moon in Taurus. I'll include that in here. But, you know, for the course of those 4 days, so from this Wednesday through Saturday, this coming Wednesday through next Saturday, we have something really potent and profound happening. And this is because we have something called a fixed grand cross. And so, what this is we have Mars moving into Leo on May 20th. We have Jupiter stepping into Taurus on May 16th. Pluto at 0 degrees of Aquarius. And Pluto entered Aquarius on March 23rd. It's going to leave that sign on June 11th of this year because it's just, giving us a little first glimpse into what the 20-year transit is going to be about. So we have Pluto in Aquarius. Mars is going to be moving into Leo soon. Jupiter is going to move into Taurus. And, we also have the North Node and South Node in very early degrees of Taurus and Scorpio. So all the fixed signs, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, are really, lit up in this huge way. And so this is one of those short and sharp crunch points of this year. And, it's a smooth year, but this is where it gets really, intense, and it can be challenging. And, the high road of the fixed grand cross in general, in my mind, is yes, it can feel, turbulent. Yes, it can feel uncomfortable, but ultimately with those difficult aspects forming with the, the T-square of, we have Jupiter in Taurus is going to square Pluto. Mars is going to be opposite Pluto, squaring Jupiter, with the nodes involved because Jupiter is going to be conjunct the North Node in Taurus. With this difficult energy, we can ultimately find a lot of growth that can come from this and change. That you're stuck in a comfort zone and you want something to, get rearranged in your life. And so this ultimately moves us toward that, where we can use this energy productively. We can know what we want to, strive towards, and we can have the fixed and determined willpower to get there. And a lot of astrologers talk about this really negatively, and I don't want to, make it so negative. And I don't buy into the fear-based, astrology. And anyway, so I'm going to sort of delve into the different layers of this, and hopefully it won't be too confusing and it won't be too much information because I don't want to overwhelm you. But I'm going to really, unpack this for you and break it down event by event so that you can sort of put these pieces together. Um, so starting on the 18th of May, just a couple of days after Jupiter enters Taurus. So Jupiter in Taurus, Jupiter is the great benefic. It brings blessings. We can really grow. We can get lucky with this energy. It's a really positive energy. But it's also a philosophical energy that demands that we do things morally and ethically, and that we cultivate wisdom. And so, Jupiter and Taurus, we can become more stable, we can develop more security, we can prosper in terms of what we're aiming towards, not only financially, but really get great success when we move in the direction of our values. We can have a really, joyful um, quality to us. And Jupiter will, bring us those rewards, metaphorically speaking, because the planets don't, do things. But, Jupiter brings the rewards, but we're not just sitting on that energy. It's an earth energy. It's Taurus. We're actively, slowly and steadily building towards something, and we're manifesting it. Um, before we can get into a whole year of Jupiter and Taurus and delve into all of the wonderful things that it has to give, we have this very, beginning point, with Jupiter in Taurus. And there's some struggle, and there are some things to be worked out. Kind of like, last year on May 10th, Jupiter moved into Aries, very pioneering, initiating, courageous, masculine fire energy. And so, Jupiter and Aries really invited us to start new things and, assert ourselves and to have the empowerment to initiate. But on the same day, Mercury went retrograde. And, it was in the midst of an eclipse season, um, at that time, last year. And so there was a little bit of a conflict with the Mercury retrograde. Let's slow down. Let's review. Let's, reflect. Let's, go back on this a little bit. Let's not jump into something. Let's finish things up from the past. And then Jupiter and Aries giving us the fire and the drive to, to make something happen. So, there's a combination of those energies where we can have the drive to finish up projects, or we can, really review something or think something through before we just jump into something. I mean, there's a lot of ways in which that energy, those two energies coming together can, help each other out, and we can balance those two energies so that we're not conflicted, moving from one, you know, operating from one energy and then feeling conflicted when the other energy is going on. We can, balance them and marry them together and then head in one direction and not be as conflicted. But back to this year, Jupiter is going to enter Taurus, and this is going to be probably, the most, uneasy, most sort of, unstable, time for the world. And it can be a little rough. However, there are ways to use these astrological energies productively, and there are also positive aspects to the energies. And it's not, so we're not getting caught in the negativity of all of it. Because swears can be really, really productive, where, we can really make things happen and move in new directions and, really take action with squares and difficult aspects. So, on May 18th, we have Jupiter squaring Pluto. This is the day that Jupiter squares Pluto, but really the energy is going to be around for a couple days before, a couple days after. And so Jupiter square Pluto really is about having a lot of drive and stamina and determination, because with Pluto rules Scorpio, and that's a fixed energy. We're talking about Jupiter and Pluto being in fixed signs. And fixed signs really, hold steady what they want to, achieve. And we want to attain, success. And we also want power. There's a strong need for um, taking back our power if we're in a limiting or disempowering situation. Um, and it's also could indicate, we feel like we need to be the best. We feel like we need to win something, and we just want to, collectively, just have the desire to just, make something happen and reach a certain point. And we are so committed to that. And so, we just, there's a desire that comes in with this square that goes, well, now it is time for me to make a change. I don't want to sit here. I want to take action and, you know, create change. Um, and so we can really shoot our target at something. But, we also need to balance out the feminine side and balance out our connection with other people, and, sympathizing and not, neglecting others, and choosing to be, collaborative, and being diplomatic, and being, open-minded, showing our open-heartedness, and thinking about compassion and prosperity. Is what I'm doing, serving others, is it based off of a heart, need for something loving, something compassionate, um, and something for the greater good, not just ourselves. And we can really value ourselves and take action to improve our lives. But where is the, selfishness turn on a negative, and where are we overdoing it? Because any square to Jupiter indicates there's probably some way that we could overdo something, that we could overindulge in something and go over the top. Squares and difficult aspects to Jupiter really bring out the more negative qualities of Jupiter. Um, and so, Jupiter squaring Pluto could, indicate, maybe, more divide and, polarization, with this, this group wanting power and control, and then this group over here wanting power and control, and being really greedy in the process. It's not enough. It's just not enough. And you have the ongoing, desire and the compulsion and the obsession for more, bigger, and better, you know because when you cut the snake heads off, more snake heads grow in its place, and then you're sitting there fighting it with, you could get eaten. But then when you cut it off, another head or two more heads grow in its place, and then you're, constantly, cutting off the desire. Or are you, just, acknowledging it, being present with it, and bringing it into the conscious light of awareness, really, to realize, um, what is going on, and, how you feel towards a certain thing, and what you're doing, and really become aware, and then take the action steps to, better that bad habit or that compulsion, or to, realize what we actually desire, and then, bring it into, groundedness, bring it into logic and practicality, and, make it happen in a way which is not destructive towards ourselves and our relationships. Um, and so, another downside with this energy is pride, where we can really become really overzealous, overconfident, and, you know, and we just, there's this fire energy that we want to, perhaps, be the best at something, or be, super, in control, super, powerful. We want to prove ourselves, prove our, worth with, Jupiter and Taurus. However, humility is important with this, and surrendering the need to, to be the best, to continually feed that desire, and and also, um, being a rebel, but not doing it for the sake of rebelling, doing it for a reason, rebelling for a cause, um, and really taking a risk without going too far. We're obviously making some kind of change, and we're doing something different. We're taking a leap of faith and shooting our arrow into, space of, where, we've never gone before. But it's important to, you know, just know when to, moderate ourselves. So moderation is really key with any hard aspects to Jupiter in general. And yeah, just not, overdoing it, knowing, when to step back and, tone it down. Um, and it's important to, this really gives us the strong desire to make changes. But, what's also really important is to trust your judgment, follow your judgment, and know that you've made the right decision. Trust that you've made the right decision. It may feel uncomfortable. You may be second guessing yourself. You may have self doubt, but it's important to trust that you're in a situation and you made the right decision. You know, where, we need to just, accept things as they are and realize that change cannot happen overnight. You know, it's so important to be very willing with North Node and Taurus to move through the process of something, move through the journey of something, know that it is going to take time, and allow yourself those breaks in between, and slow down, go slowly and steadily, one step at a time, because then you will achieve success. If you, have the mindset, oh, I'm just gonna, do all this in one sweep, and I'm gonna, have so much confidence I can, really do this, um, you know, then, it's important to be honest with yourself and stop, take a break, halt if you feel exhausted or worn out, or you feel like taking a break or feel like stopping, where self-care becomes important. Replenishing your energy, doing something like, taking a walk, going outside in nature, doing, a fun activity, just sitting back and, listening to music, or just doing something really, that grounds you, um, while you are achieving your success, so that you can have, so that you can put the focus on your experience of doing it. And, and the change may come from external. You may want to change, the external world. possibly, other people. I was reading about, possibly feeling the need to change other people. But, this is where acceptance of what is becomes really, really important with this energy. And, that may be hard to swallow because of that desire to make change, but you need to just swallow the pill and accept that people are a certain way and don't expect them to change. Don't try to push or force others to change. I mean, you can inspire them, but you can only control yourself um, and your own life. And so, it's important to not, take away, the joy and the peace, in those relationships of others, with you, and others. And, it's so important not to, rock the boat or make it difficult for, other people, but to come at change in a really diplomatic and peaceful and patient um, way. So, it's a fine balance between, acceptance of what is and, acceptance of your situation and trusting in divine timing for, when change is going to happen. Um, and, also, the courage to take those action steps to make the change. Um, now moving forward on May 19th, we have the new moon in Taurus. This is happening at 10:55 so, 10:55 a.m. Central Time and 11:55 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So this is when this is happening. It's around, the middle of the day. It's all also relative to your time zone. So this occurs at 28 degrees and 26 minutes of Taurus. Um, and so, what's important here is to, recognize that this is, this new moon is not an eclipse, because the moon is too far away. It's at 28 degrees, where the north node is at 3 or something degrees of Taurus. So if you think about the where the moon is, you count backwards from the degree that the moon is to where the nodes are, because the nodes move retrograde. If the nodes are 18 degrees, at, the maximum is 18 degrees away from, where the moon is, the degree that the moon is at, then that is where you get some kind of an eclipse. So, this new moon is, it's interesting because, we used to have a new moon before the full moon when the sun was in a zodiac sign. Now it's flipped around. We had the lunar eclipse full moon in Scorpio on May 5th, and now, 14 days later, we're having this new moon in Taurus. And I was watching a video about, lunations and lunar events. And if you take this new moon in Taurus and you look about 18 months down the road, you're going to have a full moon occur in that same sign that that new moon is occurring in, around the same degree. And this is what we call a moon family. So, this is sort of a, reflection of, because November 19th, 2021, we had a lunar eclipse in Taurus. And so 18 months later, we're having a new moon in Taurus. And that lunar eclipse was a full moon. in Taurus. And even though the nodes of the moon were not yet in Taurus and Scorpio, it was still that full moon was occurring really close to where the nodes were, even if they were in different signs. So it's all based off of geometry and alignments and things like that. And that's now I understand that because it took me a while to believe that the new moon on April 19th and 20th was a solar eclipse. But I understand now. So anyway, um, there's so many planets in the sign of Taurus. We have the sun. At the time of this new moon, we have the sun, moon, Mercury, Uranus, Jupiter, and the North Node in Taurus. So a lot going on in the sign of Taurus. And so, Taurus, the themes, with this new moon really comes down to, and I'm not going to get into the aspects of it because, I want to keep it simple. What it comes down to is recognizing that you have all that you need in the present moment. This is an opportunity to slow down and really feel into what you're feeling, to enjoy all of what there is in the moment, all of what you can gather with your senses. For example, the pants that I'm wearing, or, just the quietness, around me, or, activities that are really healing, like, getting outside in nature and really taking your nervous energy in your mind and all of your thoughts and beliefs and all of that, and then quieting the mind and being still and being present. And coming back to that you have it inside of you, that you're not looking for something to happen on the externally, but you have it inside of you. Comes back to the conversation about inner wealth, inner resources, because I was reading about that. Having the inner resources inside of you and really, being, really peaceful, and doing things, doing activities that bring you inner peace. And that you're that the physical present moment is your anchor, and you can come back to that. And you can just be here now. And you can also set intentions for and lay the foundations for a long-term goal that that you want to achieve. And like a project or something, with any new moon, it invites you to new moons are internal times, to go inside of yourself and set new intentions for what you want to achieve. And you can also reflect on those new beginnings. Times of reflection, times of going inside of yourself, as I said before, and going into the darkness, and coming into your truth, your intuition, your inner knowing of, okay, this is what I want to start. And especially with Taurus, it deals with you, because the first 6 signs of the zodiac, Aries through Virgo, deal with you and your life. And the Sun conjunct the Moon aspect deals with really your personal life and your personal relationships of what is going on in your world. And so the Sun is how you express yourself, your individuality, your ego, and everybody has an ego. And then the Moon is how you feel, your emotional temperament and nature. and it deals with nurturing and more internal matters, matters of feeling and possibly matters of the heart. So it is where, in a way, your conscious awareness is coming together with your emotional nature, and then now we can really set those new intentions. And so, there's several aspects. It's a really nice new moon. There's a sextile the sun and moon forms to Neptune, which brings about a lot of spiritual energy, where we can have our intuition, tap into our intuition, and follow that path, and come home inside ourselves, and um, so many positive things with that. I'm not going to go over those aspects, but one of the things that I'm going to say is there was a meditation that I was watching from the spiritual teacher, oracle card expert, called call it Baron Reed. And the meditation was an ancient tree meditation, a meditation for groundedness. And I highly recommend doing this meditation at this time, because it really centers you. It puts you back in touch with your body, because Taurus is about the pleasure of being in a body, living an embodied experience, and recognizing the wonderful things and features about the body and the sensual experience of living, which is what Taurus deals with. And you can recognize the oneness that you are, connect with nature, and that that you have what you need, and you can take what you need, and um, and you have it all um, inside of yourself. So, you can go listen to that meditation, um, and, can really put you back in touch with the present moment. So, looking at, and happiness on a soul level, not, needing all these, physical, material possessions to exactly define you, but, how does it make you feel inside? Um, and the moon is also exalted in the sign of Taurus. So, this adds to this. But then things are going to change. So, this new moon is sort of, something that kind of counterbalances all this other energy that I'm talking about. And then on the 20th of May, we have the part of the Grand Cross when Mars is squaring Jupiter. And this really gives you the get up and go. Mars is the activation energy, the active principle. It's about, assertion. It's that masculine energy where you can get out of bed and, make something happen. And it deals with momentum, forward movement. It gives you that feeling of optimism, and, can really, you may feel more energetic to get something done, to not just, sit on something, but to actually, cross something off your list, and make something happen with this energy. It isn't really passive energy, especially with that square energy. It's good for it's good for career, and any athletic matters. So any um, athlete who is competing in a tournament or competition, or someone doing a really huge feat where they have to give their strength, and they have to really work. This energy is great for that. It's great for risk taking and initiation in these things, because that's what Aries energy is about. Mars rules Aries. But on the downside, it can be really, harsh and impulsive, where you're overdoing this action. Um, and, it does give you strength, but it gives you, energy where you can really, sort of burn through um, things and, people, I guess you could say. And, if you feel, that driven, and it's similar to the Jupiter square Pluto energy, um, where it's important to know when to turn off the on button, to press the off button, the off switch, and tone down that um, driven um, energy that you feel, because it can, maybe it'll be too much, on a collective level, or people feel like they want to again make changes, get something happening, but again, when to not overdo it. So and again, it comes down to, again, biting off more than you can chew, taking on more than you can handle. And it can feel like, oh, I can do this, I can achieve this. But in reality, when you actually go through the experience, and maybe once the square energy lets up and starts to break apart, um, and wane, I guess you could say, you could really see, oh, I'm doing much more than I can handle. So, again, moderation when it comes to our energy and what we decide to do. Um, and, it may not be the most, advisable time to, really, take a leap of faith, because of the square to Mars. Because it's a square, it's a more challenging aspect. But you can certainly do it if you get all your ducks in a row. First, and have everything planned out. Okay, I've looked at this, I've planned this out, I've seen, I know what could happen, and I'm prepared. And then I'm going to go ahead and take action. And also not letting the ego, um, you know, run the ship, or, get in the way, or be, too much. And so, you know, moving on to the 21st, we have, Mars opposite Pluto. This is, extreme intensity. Um, and, it also sort of ties into all of the themes of this Grand Cross in huge ways. Where there's a desire to, achieve something, and it could lend itself to, the martial arts, and, showing a lot of strength and intensity. But it is, a difficult aspect, and we can certainly, show a lot of strength and intensity, but, um, you know, balancing balancing the masculine with the feminine is important here. So, that is my take on this week, this Grand Cross, and this new moon. Hopefully, you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in another video.